Hi, I'm Sophie, a 42-year-old interior designer with a thriving business. My life took a significant turn when I married Mark, a wonderful man who came with a 14-year-old daughter named Lily from his previous marriage. From the moment we tied the knot, I knew that blending our families would be a challenge, especially with a teenager involved. Lily made her feelings about me very clear right from the start. She would often roll her eyes and say things like, "Dad, can you tell your wife to stop trying so hard?" The way she emphasized your wife felt like a slap in the face every time. The first few months were a battlefield. Lily would slam doors, ignore my presence, and throw tantrums that could rival any dramatic scene from a movie. But I refused to let her behavior get to me. Instead of punishing her or retaliating, I chose a different path. One evening, after yet another outburst, I knocked on her door. "Lily, I'm not here to replace your mom," I said softly through the door. "I just hope we can find a way to get along." That night, she didn't respond, but something shifted in the air. I realized that if I wanted to build a relationship with her, I needed to treat her like an adult, not a child who needed to be controlled. Slowly but surely, our relationship began to change. As time passed, Lily started to acknowledge me more. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Little did I know this was just the beginning of our journey together. As the months rolled on, I noticed a gradual shift in Lily's demeanor. The tension that once filled our home began to dissipate, replaced by tentative moments of connection. It wasn't an overnight transformation. Rather, it was like watching ice slowly melt under the warmth of the sun. One afternoon, while I was preparing dinner, I heard Lily's voice from the living room. "Dad, Rachel's lasagna actually smells good," she called out, using my name for the first time without a hint of sarcasm. My heart swelled at that moment. It was a small acknowledgement, but it felt like a breakthrough. I made it a point to include Lily in family activities. Whether it was planning weekend outings or movie nights, I wanted her to feel like she was part of our family. I remember one particular Saturday when we decided to have a DIY home decor project together. I handed her a paintbrush and we spent hours transforming an old piece of furniture into something beautiful. We laughed, shared stories, and for the first time, I felt like I was getting to know the real Lily. As the months turned into years, our relationship continued to blossom. Lily began to approach me with small requests, asking for advice on school projects or even sharing her thoughts about her friends. I made sure to listen, to validate her feelings, and to be there for her. It was during one of those late-night talks that she confided in me about her struggles with self-esteem. "I just want to fit in, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I reassured her that it was okay to feel that way and that everyone goes through similar phases. The biggest change came when Lily's mother, Clara, remarried. With her own life moving forward, Clara's comments that used to pit Lily against me became less frequent. I noticed that the phone calls Lily had with her mom became shorter and less emotional. One evening, while we were cooking dinner together, Lily said, "Mom seems happier now. I guess everyone deserves a second chance at happiness, right?" Those words felt like a peace offering, and I accepted them gratefully. When Lily got accepted into college, I was overjoyed. Mark and I had discussed how we could support her, and it felt natural to help with her tuition. After all, we had come so far from those early days of slammed doors and silent treatments. The night before she left for college, we sat on her bed, surrounded by half-packed boxes and piles of clothes. I had something important to share. "Lily," I said, "my brother David runs a marketing firm downtown. If you're interested, I can help you get a position there after you graduate. It's a great place to start your career." Her eyes lit up, and she hugged me tightly. "Really? That would be amazing, Sophie. Thank you." During her college years, we didn't see each other as often as I would have liked. She came home for holidays and occasional weekends, which was normal for a college student. But every time she visited, I made sure to cook her favorite meals. My famous lasagna and those chocolate chip cookies she used to sneak from the kitchen when she thought I wasn't looking. As the business management program going, I would ask over dinner, genuinely interested in her life. She would light up sharing stories about her classes, her internships, and her plans for the future. I never pushed her to talk about her mother, and she never hesitated to share her experiences with me. One evening, during dinner, Lily said, "You know, my roommate can't believe how lucky I am to have such a cool stepmom. She's always complaining about hers." Those words meant more to me than she probably realized. After all those years of struggle, hearing her refer to me as cool felt like winning an Olympic medal. Mark squeezed my hand under the table, and I knew he felt the same way. As I reflected on our journey, I realized that we had built something beautiful together, a bond that felt like family. As the years flew by, the day of Lily's high school graduation arrived, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and nostalgia. It felt like just yesterday that she was a reluctant teenager, and now she was stepping into adulthood. I wanted to make this day special for her, not just as a celebration of her achievements, but also as a symbol of our journey together. In the weeks leading up to graduation, I had been planning a surprise for Lily. I had inherited a small house from my grandmother, a cozy 2-bedroom place in a nice neighborhood. It wasn't huge, but it was perfect for a young professional starting out. I had been renting it out for years, but now I wanted to give it to Lily as a graduation gift. I envisioned her moving in, decorating it with her own style, and making it her first home. On the night before her graduation, I sat in my living room, the keys to the house resting in my palm. I felt a rush of excitement and nervousness. Would she appreciate it? Would she see it as a gesture of love and support? I hoped so. The next day, as we drove to the graduation ceremony, Lily chatted animatedly about her friends' post-graduation plans. "Sarah's moving to Chicago, and Mike got that job in Boston. It's weird how everyone's spreading out across the country," she said, her eyes sparkling with anticipation for the future. I caught Mark's eye and smiled, feeling a sense of unity in our little family. After the ceremony, as we celebrated with friends and family, I could barely contain my excitement. Once we were home, I gathered everyone in the living room. "Lily," I said, my hands shaking slightly as I pulled out the keys attached to a small silver keychain with her initials. "I have something for you." "What's this?" she asked, her brow furrowing in confusion as she took the keys from my hand. "It's your new apartment," I said simply, my heart racing. "My grandmother's old place. It's yours now." The room fell silent. Lily stared at the keys in her hand, then looked at me, her expression a mix of shock and disbelief. Mark's mouth dropped open in surprise. "Are you serious?" Lily finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "Completely serious," I replied, my heart swelling with hope. "You'll need your own place now that you're starting your career, maybe even a family someday." Tears filled her eyes as she lunged at me, wrapping her arms around my neck in a tight embrace. "Sophie, I can't believe this. Thank you." Mark joined in, pulling us both into a warm hug. "You're amazing, you know that?" he whispered in my ear, and I felt a wave of love wash over me. "Can I go see it right now?" Lily asked, her excitement palpable. "I want to get a feel for my new home." "Of course," I said, giving her the address again, making sure she had it right. "Take your time exploring. The keys work on both the building entrance and the apartment door." As she rushed out the door, I turned to Mark, and we shared a moment of quiet joy. "Just think," I said, resting my head on his shoulder. "Someday she'll meet someone special, and they'll make that place their first home together." Mark kissed the top of my head. "And you'll spoil our grandkids just like you've spoiled our daughter," he replied, and my heart swelled at the thought. After all these years of struggle, I felt like I had finally become a true part of this family. But little did I know, the joy of that day would soon be overshadowed by unexpected turmoil. The days following Lily's graduation were filled with excitement and anticipation. I was eager to see her settle into her new apartment and start this next chapter of her life. However, that excitement was abruptly interrupted one afternoon when Clara, Lily's mother, stormed into our home like a whirlwind. "Dare you!" Clara shouted, her face contorted with rage. I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, when I heard the front door slam open. My heart raced as I turned to face her. "Who do you think you are?" "Clara, what's wrong?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Emma told me about your little gift," she spat, her eyes blazing with fury. "An entire house? Really? You think you can buy my daughter's love with a property?" The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "That's not what this is about at all," I replied, raising my hands in a placating gesture. "I inherited that house from my grandmother. I just wanted to help Lily start her adult life." "Oh, how convenient," Clara sneered, pacing our living room like a caged animal. "You just happened to have a spare house lying around, and you had to give it to my daughter, knowing full well I could never match such an extravagant gift." "Clara, please," I attempted to explain, my heart pounding. "I love Lily. She's like a daughter to me. I just wanted to support her." Clara's laughter was harsh and bitter. "You've been trying to replace me since day one. First with the fancy vacations, then paying for her college, and now this?" She stepped closer, her hand raised as if to strike, and I instinctively took a step back. Before anything could escalate, Mark appeared out of nowhere, grabbing Clara's wrist firmly. "That's enough," he said, his voice steady and authoritative. "You need to leave, now." Clara yanked her arm free, her eyes blazing with hatred. "This isn't over, Sophie. You think you're so generous, so perfect? Well, you can't buy a mother's love. Lily will always be my daughter, not yours, no matter how many houses you throw at her." With that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her with enough force to rattle the windows. I stood frozen in place, my whole body trembling. Mark tried to pull me into an embrace, but I couldn't relax into it. My mind was racing, replaying Clara's words over and over. Had I really been trying to buy Lily's love all these years? Was that what everyone thought? "Clara's wrong," Mark said softly, but something in his voice sounded uncertain. "You know she's wrong, right?" I nodded mechanically, but inside, I felt like my whole world was starting to crumble. 10 years of building trust, of careful steps forward and occasional steps back, all reduced to accusations of bribery and manipulation. The next morning, Lily showed up looking like she hadn't slept. She shuffled into the kitchen while I was making coffee, barely meeting my eyes. "Lily, about yesterday," I started, but she cut me off. "I don't want to talk about it," she said flatly, turning away from me. Without another word, she disappeared into her old room, leaving me standing there, coffee pot in hand, listening to her door click shut. The sound felt final, like a judge's gavel coming down. Throughout the day, I could hear her fingers tapping against her phone screen, probably texting someone, her mother, I assumed. When Lily finally emerged for dinner, the silence had morphed into something worse. She pushed her food around her plate, phone still clutched in her left hand, before suddenly announcing, "I'm throwing a graduation party at Lami's next weekend." Relief flooded through me. Finally, a chance to move past this awkwardness. "That's wonderful. I can help you plan everything. Lami's is expensive, but we can—" "No," Lily interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass. "My real mother is paying for it." The way she emphasized real made my stomach clench. Not just mom or mother, but real mother, like she was deliberately drawing a line between us. Later that night, I told Mark about the conversation. The way she said real mother, it was like she was trying to hurt me, I said, my voice trembling. "You're reading too much into this," he said, patting my hand absent-mindedly. "She's just stressed about everything that's happened. You know how Clara can get." But I wasn't reading too much into it. I could feel the wall between Lily and me growing taller, brick by brick, with each passing day. As the days passed, the atmosphere in our home grew increasingly tense. I could hear Lily's voice drifting down the hallway, cheerfully planning her graduation party with friends and relatives. "The party's going to be amazing. Mom rented out the whole restaurant," she gushed, her excitement palpable. Each time I heard her on the phone, it felt like another brick was being added to the wall between us. I stood in the hallway, key still in hand, listening to her make plans. It was painful to realize that I was being systematically excluded from this significant moment in her life. The laughter and joy that once filled our home now felt like a distant memory, replaced by a heavy silence that hung in the air. After 2 days of this emotional torture, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I found Lily in the kitchen one morning, scrolling through her phone, seemingly oblivious to the tension that had built up between us. "Lily," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "can we talk about the party? I haven't heard any details yet. What time should—" "You're not coming," she cut me off, still not looking up from her phone. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What?" I managed to whisper, my heart racing. She finally looked up, her expression cold, her mouth twisted into a smile I barely recognized. "You heard me. You're not invited." I gripped the kitchen counter to steady myself, feeling the world around me spin. "Emma, what's going on? Is this because of what happened with your mother the other day?" "My real mother," she corrected, emphasizing each word like a weapon. "And yes, she doesn't want you there. Neither do I." I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. "I don't understand. If this is about the apartment—" She let out a harsh laugh that made me flinch. "Oh, I'm keeping the apartment. I mean, who turns down a free place to live? Consider it payment for all the years I had to put up with you and your perfect stepmom act." The room seemed to spin as her words sank in. "Put up with me? What are you talking about? Have you been suffering all this time?" "God, you really don't get it, do you?" she shot back, standing up and pushing her chair back with a screech against the tile floor. "I never loved you. You were just the woman who made sure my parents could never get back together. If you hadn't shown up, they might have worked things out. We could have been a real family again." Each word felt like a physical blow, and I struggled to catch my breath. I thought about all the nights I had stayed up helping her with homework, all the times I had held her while she cried over boys, all the mother-daughter moments I thought we had shared. "Real family?" I managed to say, my voice cracking. "What do you think we've been for the last 10 years? All those vacations we took together, the college tuition." "Yeah, throwing money around. That's your solution to everything, isn't it?" she sneered, her expression twisted in anger. "Fancy trips, expensive gifts, paying for college, and now an apartment. Did you think you could just buy yourself a daughter?" Tears began to form in my eyes, but I blinked them back. "That's not what I was trying to do. I did those things because I love you, because I thought we were family." She laughed again, a horrible, mocking laugh that echoed in my ears. "My mom is my family. Dad is my family. You're just the woman who came along and ruined everything, and now you're trying to buy my love with an apartment." I felt like I couldn't breathe. All those years, was any of it real? "The party's on Sunday at 7, she said, instead of answering me, walking toward her room. "Don't show up. You're not welcome." The door slammed so hard that the photos on the wall rattled. Photos of us at her high school graduation, at Christmas, at the beach. Moments I had treasured that now felt like elaborate lies. The coffee in my mug had long gone cold, but I couldn't bring myself to dump it out. It felt like dumping out the last 10 years of my life. That evening, I waited for Mark to come home, my hands shaking as I rehearsed how I would tell him about Lily's cruel words. When he finally walked through the door, I spilled the story out between sobs I couldn't control. "I'll talk to her," he said immediately, heading straight to Lily's room without even taking off his coat. I sat in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, waiting. The minutes crawled by like hours. When Mark finally emerged, I looked up expectantly, hoping for support, understanding, anything that would make this nightmare better. "Rachel," he said, his voice heavy with uncertainty, "Emma has some valid points. Maybe it would be better if you didn't come to the party." The world stopped spinning in that moment. 10 years of marriage crystallized into perfect clarity. I had been living a lie all along. I felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under me. "You're still going?" My voice sounded distant, unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone else. Of course, she's my daughter, Mark replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The weight of his words settled heavily on my chest, suffocating me. For the next few days, I played the part of the perfect, understanding wife. I smiled at breakfast, made their favorite dinners, and pretended everything was fine while my heart shattered into smaller pieces with each passing hour. I felt like a ghost in my own home, watching as the two people I loved most in the world prepared to celebrate a milestone that I had been excluded. Sunday evening arrived, and I watched them leave for the party, my heart heavy with betrayal. As their car disappeared around the corner, I sprang into action. I had made a decision, one that felt both liberating and terrifying. The locksmith was already waiting at my grandmother's apartment, and I had called him earlier that day, explaining the urgency without going into details. He worked quickly and efficiently, not asking questions about why I needed the locks changed so urgently. Within 20 minutes, I had new keys in my hand. Back home, I moved like a woman possessed, fueled by a mix of anger and determination. Mark's clothes went into suitcases, sorted by season and type, just like I had always done when we packed for vacations. Everything was stacked neatly by the door, ready for his departure from my life. As I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, the familiar soothing aroma filled the kitchen. I sat down on the couch, trying to calm my racing heart. I opened Instagram, and my stomach dropped as I saw the photos from the party. There was Lily, sandwiched between Mark and Clara, all three of them beaming at the camera like they didn't have a care in the world. The caption read, "So blessed to be celebrating with the people who truly matter." At midnight, I heard Mark's key in the lock, his footsteps echoing in the hallway. I braced myself for the confrontation that was about to unfold. When he reached the bedroom and saw the suitcases, confusion washed over his face. "Rachel, what's all this?" he asked, his voice sharp with disbelief. I set down my cup carefully, the porcelain making a soft clink against the coffee table. "You need to find somewhere else to live," I said, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. He laughed, actually laughed, as if this were all some silly joke. "Don't you think you're overreacting? It was just a party." "A party?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You took her side when she said she never loved me. You watched her treat me like garbage and did nothing." Mark's expression shifted, and I could see the realization dawning on him. "Rachel, wait a minute. We can fix this." "Fix what?" I shot back, my heart racing. "The fact that you never loved me? That I was just a convenient replacement mother for your daughter? That you stood by while she threw 10 years of love back in my face?" Before he could respond, the front door burst open with a bang. Lily stormed in, her party dress wrinkled, mascara streaking down her face. "What did you do?" she screamed, her voice filled with rage. "Why can't I get into my apartment?" I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. "Oh, you mean my grandmother's apartment? You gave it to me, remember? You can't just take it back," she shouted, her voice cracking with panic. "I can't believe you're doing this." "I can, and I did," I replied, my voice firm. "And while we're at it," I called my brother this morning, "don't bother applying for that position at his company. You're no longer part of the family." Lily's face crumpled, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. "But so cruel. How can you do this to me?" "Cruel?" I stood up slowly, feeling empowered for the first time in days. "Cruel is pretending to love someone for 10 years. Cruel is taking everything they give you while secretly despising them. Cruel is excluding them from your graduation party and posting photos about your real family." Mark finally found his voice. "Rachel, you're being unreasonable." "No," I said, turning to face them both. "I'm being clear for the first time in 10 years. This is my apartment. You are no longer my family. I want you both out. Now." Lily burst into tears and ran to her room, slamming the door behind her. I could hear her packing, crying, and cursing as she threw her belongings into her suitcase. Mark kept trying to talk to me, but I turned up the kitchen faucet to drown out his voice. 30 minutes later, Lily emerged with her suitcase, her face red with fury. "You're a horrible person," she spat. "You're worse than I ever thought. I hate you." "Goodbye, Lily," I said calmly, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. "Mark, don't forget your golf clubs in the garage." They left, the door closing behind them with a final click. I stood in my silent apartment, breathing deeply for what felt like the first time in days. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages. Clara called 17 times before switching to texts, each one more hostile than the last. "How dare you take back the apartment, you manipulative witch! I'll sue you for this." Mark's messages were different, pleading, apologetic. "Please talk to me. We can work this out. I'm sorry about everything." And then there was Lily's message, a mix of anger and desperation. "I didn't mean what I said. You're ruining my life. Please, Rachel, I'm sorry." I blocked them all without responding. 10 years of manipulation and lies had finally become clear. They had used me for my money, my apartment, my connections, but no more. I felt a sense of liberation wash over me, a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was finally free to be myself, to reclaim my life. The divorce proceedings were swift, thanks to our prenuptial agreement. Mark tried to claim half of my assets, arguing about his contributions to the marriage, but his lawyer's face fell when mine produced the prenup he had signed a decade ago. I had protected myself, and now it was paying off. Through mutual friends, I heard that Mark and Lily had found a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. I imagined them struggling to adjust to their new life without me, and a part of me felt a twinge of sadness. But I quickly reminded myself that I had to focus on my own happiness now. As the weeks turned into months, I settled into my new routine. The apartment felt bigger now, emptier, but it was mine. Every morning I made my chamomile tea and sat by the window, watching the sunrise. I took time to rediscover myself, to explore my passions outside of work. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years, and it felt like a breath of fresh air. I also began volunteering at a local community center, helping young women develop their skills in interior design. It was fulfilling to share my knowledge and experience with others, and I found joy in watching them grow and succeed. I realized that I had so much to offer beyond the confines of my previous life. One evening, while I was working on a new design project, I received a message from an old friend. "Hey, Sophie, it's been a while. Let's catch up over coffee." I smiled at the thought of reconnecting with someone who knew me before all the chaos. As I sipped my tea, I reflected on the journey I had taken. I had endured heartbreak and betrayal, but I had also found strength and resilience within myself. I was no longer defined by my role as a stepmother or a wife. I was Sophie, a woman who had reclaimed her life. Months later, I received a call from my brother David. "I heard about everything that happened," he said gently. "I just wanted to check in on you. How are you doing?" "I'm doing well, actually," I replied, feeling a sense of pride in my voice. "I've been focusing on myself and my work. It's been a journey, but I'm finally finding my way." "Good to hear," he said. "You deserve happiness, Sophie. Let's get together soon. I'd love to see what you've been working on." As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of hope for the future. I had learned that family isn't just about blood, it's about the connections we choose to nurture. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength to face it head on. In the end, I realized that sometimes letting go is the first step toward finding yourself. I had closed one chapter of my life, but I was excited to see what the next one would bring.